An important skill for adults at any phase in their life is being able to identify and prevent skin cancers. A skin cancer is the leading cancer in the United States. And there are three regular types of skin cancer, the first being basal cell carcinomas. So basal cell carcinomas are very easily detected, especially if you go and visit a dermatologist, and they're extremely common with over 3 million cases reported in the US every year. Basal cell carcinomas can be treated with early intervention, and they usually have a 100% success rate. They can be confused with skin conditions like eczema or psoriasis, so a dermatologist's opinion can be extremely helpful. When looking for basal cell carcinomas, you should look in areas that usually get a lot of sun exposure, such as the face and neck, although they can also show up on the legs and arms. They often appear waxy or pink with engorged blood vessels visible, and they can also be brown and scaly as well as crusty to the touch, which is another reason why it can be confused with eczema. The next type of skin cancer that you can look at is the squamous cell carcinomas, and this is the second most common form of skin cancer alongside basal. They're largely curable if caught early, and there's usually around 1.8 million cases a year. If left to grow, however, these cells can spread internally and become deadly, and they usually target areas like the lungs. When looking for squamous cell carcinomas, you should look for thick, scaly patches of skin, and these areas may bleed. They often have abnormal borders, and they also appear with those swollen blood vessels mentioned before. Squamous cell carcinomas can also look like age spots, so they can be kind of confusing. So like the basal cell carcinomas, you should get a dermatologist's opinion. And this can all be looked at if you have routine check-ins with your dermatologist. The third and most dangerous type of skin cancer is melanoma. It's the most aggressive, and there's roughly 200,000 cases in the US every year. Melanomas develop in the melanin cells, which are responsible for production of color in the skin, and they have a much lower survival and elimination rate, and usually, if it progresses, need to be treated through treatments like radiation and chemotherapy. When looking for melanomas, they're known to evolve, so if you have a mole you've had for several years and you see it start to change and grow and sort of branch out into a strange pattern, that's a warning sign. And they can occur anywhere on the body, even areas that don't get lots of sun exposure. So for women, most of the time melanoma appears on the legs, but for men they usually appear in the groin area. They may look different from other moles on your body, and the rule of thumb here is to look for the ugly duckling, because they're usually kind of nasty looking and very different from other moles on your body. The most effective way to evaluate signs of skin cancer for any of these phases is the ABCDE guide, but it is the most effective for melanoma. So A, you need to look for asymmetry. Most moles are round, so if you see one that has sort of a different shape on one side than the other, that's a warning sign. A dark border, so B for border, you should look for a dark rim around it. If the border is sort of flat or doesn't seem to branch out and it's not a clear circular shape, that's also a warning sign. C is for color, so if you have a very dark mole or a grayish mole or just something that doesn't quite look right, doesn't look brown, doesn't follow the natural theme of the other moles on your body, that's a warning sign. D is for diameter. No healthy mole should exceed about the size of an eraser, a pencil eraser. So if you have a really large mole, you should look out for that. And then E, as discussed before, is evolution. So you'll see where that branches out, and those are usually tied directly into diameter. As with the evolution, the mole usually gets really big. So when preventing skin cancer, the number one cause is sun exposure. So preventable skin cancer is usually caused from UV rays from the sun. And when you know you're going to go in the sun in order to prevent skin cancer, you can do the following. So you can wear protective clothing, such as long sleeves and long pants, and a wide-brimmed hat. You should wear sunscreen of SPF 30 or higher, and you should put on sunscreen 30 minutes before you know you're going to go outside. And if you're doing a lot of sweating or swimming, you should reapply after about an hour. And you should always try to avoid the sun at its highest point, and this can be during any season, summer, winter, fall, anytime there's sun, and even on cloudy days. So from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., the sun is going to be at its highest point. And a general rule of thumb for that is if your shadow is shorter than you are, you should try to go inside or use other forms of skin protection. Other factors that can cause skin cancer or can increase your risk is your genetic history. So if you have family members that have skin cancer, you should always check in with your dermatologist and start going in your 20s. If you have light skin or eyes, you're more likely to develop melanomas, or if you have red or blonde hair, so keep that in mind. You should always avoid indoor tanning as it's more concentrated UV lights, just like being out in the sun. And if you do tan, you should use protection. And self-tanners, such as bronzers, are usually recommended in order to avoid the sun damage. And you should always keep track of what moles and freckles you have. A common rule is checking on your birthday. So every year you take account for all the moles you have and see if there have been any significant changes.